Wander Wealthy Podcast, episode 265. Welcome back to another episode of the Wander Wealthy Podcast. My name is Tess. I'm the host of this show, founder of Wander Wealthy, and finance coach turned business coach to help all of my fellow new, aspiring, and even seasoned money coaches out there in the world navigate this world of online business. How do you build a life-changing coaching offering? How do you market and sell that offering? How do you not completely self-sabotage any success that you're trying to make as an entrepreneur? And these are the questions that we answer here on the Wander Wealthy Podcast. I am so grateful that you're here today, joining me for an episode that's not necessarily covering any of those things. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a life update for you all. We have some exciting things coming down the track. I don't know what kind of metaphor I want to use, but coming up for you over the next couple of months. And I want to give you that update. I also have some personal updates and business updates and just lots of different things to discuss. And I thought, you know what? The best way to do this is on here, on one of my favorite ways to connect with you all. So yeah, buckle in. I have no notes. This is the first time I've ever just done a podcast. I mean, like a life update and also without any notes. And so I hope I remember to include everything that I wanted to share with you today, but we are just going to dive right into it. So, where do we start? I think first things first, while I have your attention, because hopefully you're still listening, is to share what is coming up on the Wander Wealthy Podcast over the next 3 months. And that is that we are going to be doing a spring break money coach school. Over the next 3 months, I am actually going to be taking a break from creating brand new podcast episodes, and I'm going to be sharing with you some of the top podcast episodes from the last 2 years that I have created and that the listeners, you and all of the clients who have become Wealthy Coach Blueprint clients and created their own money coaching businesses, the favorite episodes and the most helpful episodes that you have let me know and have clearly listened to, and that my clients have said, hey, this was really helpful. I got so much from this. I've collected all that data and I'm bringing it together, and I'm resharing those episodes over the next 3 months. So from April through June, that is what you get to expect, are a lot of different episode replays. But what's really exciting is that when I went to find, it's 12 to 13 episodes, I believe, that are going to be getting replayed over the next 3 months. When I went to kind of pick, okay, these are all the best, highest performing, most enjoyed episodes that were really helpful for my clients and just listeners in general, I wanted to make sure that the order that I shared them in back to you, right? Because I think, just a little aside, when you listen to a podcast, a lot of times you might be listening to this podcast as the first one you've ever listened to here on the Wander Wealthy Podcast. Alternatively to that, you might start at the way beginning. Well, if you start at the way beginning of this podcast, you know that I started off doing money advice, money interviews, and really talking about personal finance. And then I shifted to business finance. And it wasn't until 2020 where we really started focusing in on building a successful money coaching business. So it can be hard to know where to start and in what order to listen to. And oftentimes when I have clients sign up to work with me, they also ask me, before we get going, because maybe we're not starting for another couple weeks, they want to know what episodes to listen to and what are going to be the most helpful for them. And so this is also my way to kind of do that, to say, hey, if you want to go through Money Coach School over the next 3 months to really figure out what's important and what do you need to be focusing on to build your own business, this Spring Break Money Coach School is going to be that for you. So I ordered the episodes, the top listened to, most helpful episodes, in the order that I also believe is going to serve you and that makes the most sense when it comes to building your business. So I'm really excited about that. I put a lot of thought into how to do this and how to make sure that it's a really good experience for you and it's helpful. And either they're going to be refreshers and you can re-listen to these episodes because maybe you haven't heard it in a year or two and we need to maybe revisit that. Or like I said, you're new here and you're just looking for, like basically think about this as a course, a program that you're going through week by week over the next 3 months via the free content that I put out on the Wonder Wealthy podcast, which if you listen closely, you'll know that a lot of this content comes straight from my program as well. So it may be free, but it's some of the most valuable content you could be listening to if you're looking to build a money coaching business. So that's the first thing, is that the next 3 months are going to be the Spring Break Money Coach School. You're going to get the top episodes dripped out to you week by week that are going to be in a specific order to really help you build your thriving money coaching business and just become a better coach and whatever else you need. So be on the lookout for that. And that way, over the next 3 months, I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break from producing new content week by week. Of course, I'm hopefully going to be using that time to batch record new episodes when we get back in the middle of the summer, and all of that stuff will be done and dusted and good for me to put out there. And in the meantime, you'll still have content to refresh or to listen to for maybe the first time. So we're kicking that off next week, starting in April. The other news, and I think another or a big reason why I'll be doing the spring break kind of time off of new podcast recordings and working on really batching other recordings is because I am finally getting married in June of this year. This has been a 2-year-long process to make happen. My husband and I call him my husband because we are legally married. We got legally married in 2019 with the expectation to get married with, having a wedding and all of that jazz in 2020. Obviously, it's very difficult to have an international wedding when there's a global pandemic, and we had to cancel and postpone I think like 3 different times, maybe even more. Honestly, I lost count. And finally, with the world opening back up, vaccinations being readily available, and just life being a little bit easier and safer to live these days, we are finally able to celebrate safely with our friends and family and host a wedding because, I was really jealous of a lot of people just having small weddings and getting married despite the pandemic. I mean, I still, under safe guidelines and whatnot. But I was a little bit jealous because it would be great to just have gotten it over with and do something very small. But given our logistics, my husband's family is Italian and lives in Italy. My family is American and lives in the US. Even if we just wanted to do something small with our closest family members, we couldn't because it was not possible for Americans to fly to Italy or even to fly to Switzerland until more recently, and vice versa. It was very difficult for Italians to travel to the US. So it wasn't even possible for us, which is why, we've had this now like a 3-year-long engagement, weird legal wedding, and now it's going to be an official wedding. Not official. I mean, it's really confusing, but like a wedding that's going to take place. And it is finally happening in June, which means being able to take some time off from constant podcast production gives me time to make sure that everything is in place for the wedding. And honestly, just give us time to remember what we had even planned 2 years ago. I mean, so much has changed. We've had to send out invitations 3 different times. It's an added, planning a wedding is a full-time job. I truly believe it. I don't know how people do it. I can't believe so many people do it every single year, and it's just like such a normal thing to do for so many people. I know some make it very simple, and we've tried to do that as well. But I just like can't believe that people do it. It's amazing what people can do with, also having a full-time job. And it makes sense why people hire planners. Anyway, I'm babbling, but I hope you're enjoying me just sharing with you my inner thoughts. But on top of that, obviously, it's not just planning wedding, but having postponed and now revisiting all the things that we've forgotten and re-inviting people. And it's crazy how much can change in 2 years, because now we're looking back at our guest list and it's people have gotten married, people have gotten divorced, people have passed away. So much has changed just from the guest list perspective. So there's a lot of things that we've had to kind of sort through logistically, and still much to come. So having only about 2.5 months left before that takes place, we have lots to sort through. And taking some time off from podcast production, like I said, gives us a little bit more time to just get that finalized and done. And honestly, that's what we're most looking forward to. Obviously, we're super excited to celebrate with friends and family, but just to have it over with, I mean, after 2 years, 3 years, I don't even know how long, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel of that. So we're excited for it to happen. We're also excited for it to be over with, and we can finally say, checked that box. Something has been accomplished. That is one piece of the pie. The other reason for being able to take this time to batch record future episodes is because we are also, my husband and I, expecting our first child in October. So adding on top of it the stress of needing to have our wedding, we have now added a child into the mix, which is another thing that I'm like, I can't believe so many people do this. But here we are. We're trying to tackle it as well. So we will be having our first child. We are super excited for this thing to enter the world and join us. And it was kind of, well, I don't need to get into it, but spur of the moment it happened. And we couldn't be more excited to be able to raise it. And also, I just find it really fascinating being able to explore what being pregnant is like in a foreign country, the whole maternity aspect of being in a foreign country, and, my decisions being a business owner in a foreign country and what I'm choosing to do moving forward. So this is another key part of the information. Obviously, the next 3 months, there's going to be some replays playing. I am going to attempt to use these next 3 months also to batch record for future episodes. And I will actually be taking a 6-month maternity leave starting in mid-September or October, and obviously going into the new year of 2023. Now, this might be obvious for those who have listened to the podcast, because I have been mentioning that it is kind of the last chance to work with me inside of the Wealthy Coach Blueprint, which is my signature program, for the rest of the year. And the main reason is because we're going to have a baby and be very busy with that. And another piece of this was me making the decision that even as a business owner, I am choosing to really lean into, I think it's a luxury and very much a privilege to be able to do this, but lean into the kind of expectation. And I wish it was just like the obvious choice of taking a longer maternity leave. Now, it's a little bit complicated because we live in Switzerland. We don't live in other parts of Europe. So if we did live in other parts of Europe, a 6-month maternity leave is not even that long. Like most people, especially in Scandinavia, can get up to a year, if not more, of maternity leave. And then all throughout Europe, the rules are different. But it's also, when you contrast that to American maternity benefits, which are zero, at least from a governmental perspective, it's interesting that when you contrast the governmental sort of minimums in European countries to what women are oftentimes even just lucky to get from maybe their employer in the States, as like, usually it's about 3 months. I know some companies have extended it more recently, but I would say on average, if you're working for a company with great benefits, then the average is 3 months. Comparing that to Europe is like such a joke, because in Europe, typically from a governmental level, it's, again, like I said, northern countries, it's still around a year. 6 months is a good threshold. I've seen 5 months. Now, like I was saying, because we live in Switzerland, it's actually only 8 weeks here. But it's illegal to go back to work before 8 weeks after you give birth. So I guess within those first 8 weeks, your employer cannot force you to come back to work. And the government really highly suggests that you don't. So even contrasting that to the US, where some women just have to go right back to work, is just mind-blowing. But being able to take that 8 weeks, what is also astonishing, and Switzerland historically, if you contrast it to other European countries, actually has some really bad, quote unquote, it's weird to talk about it as an American because obviously we have like nothing, but has quote unquote bad sort of maternity benefits and benefits for women in general when you contrast to the other European countries. But still in Switzerland, what I find amazing is that as part of the social insurance that I pay into as a self-employed business owner, I actually get maternity pay for a maximum of 14 weeks. So a lot of these things obviously make it easier for me to make the decision to even just take a maternity leave in the first place, to know that, if I was working for a company in Switzerland, I wouldn't even be able to go back to work within the first 8 weeks. And then also to know that because I've been paying into the social insurance, which is kind of, you can equate it to self-employment insurance, which in the employed sphere of work in the US is your Social Security and your Medicare. So it's fairly similar to that. That is the kind of baseline tax that I have to pay here in Switzerland. In addition to obviously income tax. But as part of that social insurance that covers kind of old age benefit and whatnot, it also covers this maternity pay, which is amazing. And the maternity pay, just, if you want to get into it, is about 80% of my salary, if you will. And they typically pay you daily up to 14 weeks. So that's about 3.5 months of pay that I'll get from the government because of taking a maternity leave. And it's just amazing that as a self-employed person, you get to benefit from that, because kind of, again, contrasting that back to the US, when you are self-employed, you don't get anything, right? You decide how much maternity leave you want to take. And then if you're taking maternity leave, you determine, how you're going to make money or what that financial situation is going to look like. And so most people with their own business choose to take a very short maternity leave or to take no maternity leave. Or if they do take a maternity leave, then they really have to determine financially how that's going to impact them. And usually it's using your own savings in order to make that happen. So I feel very privileged and fortunate to even just be living in Switzerland and paying into the, what would be the equivalent of self-employment tax, their social insurance system, to be able to benefit from that. And then beyond that, it's almost like for me choosing to take not 3.5 months just to be able to recoup that pay, but then choosing to take that extended leave, I guess what I would call it. But I think, like I said, other Europeans would be like, no, obviously you would take 6 months, or obviously you would take a year, which is just so funny to say that when I know a majority of my listeners are American. But being married to an Italian, that is very much the mindset. Like, no, obviously you would take 6 months. Are you crazy? And I think that, again, it's I'm in a very fortunate position where my partner is supportive of that, and where that is already the mindset of my partner. And I live in a place where that would also be, just socially acceptable. And I just think about how sad it is that in the US it's so different. So I make this decision, and we've had to make this decision together considering the financial impact, because beyond that first 14 weeks, I won't have necessarily the income that I currently have or that I would even have from the government. But we're still making this decision based on I think just a choice of, this is a time in our lives where we do have the savings. We are able to do this. And I think a lot of times, because we either need to or we feel we need to, as business owners or as women, we, either have to make the decision to go back to work earlier because of the lack of child care benefits and maternity benefits in the US or in other countries that any of you listeners might be listening in from. So we have to make the decision to do that. And then also there's this kind of, for me, the mental chatter of like, this is what you should do, when in fact and in reality, I do believe that if I can take an extended time off, I want to honor that. And again, I recognize that I am in a position where I'm able to do that, half because of the government, and then the other half because of my supportive partner and our financial situation. But it's also like quite a mindset decision to make too, because of course I have all of these overwhelming thoughts of what's going to happen to my business, and am I going to be able to stay relevant, and are people going to be sticking around, and what are things going to look like, 6 months, or I guess from this point it would be like a year in the future. And the honest truth is that I don't know, and I'm willing to navigate these waters as they happen instead of trying to figure out predict the future right now. That's something that I've been juggling with. I don't even want to say struggling, but juggling with and having conversations with my therapist a lot. Is I find myself constantly living in the future, trying to go, how am I going to solve all these problems when that is so far away? And I have so little data and information to be able to even make decisions based on how I'll be feeling or where my business will be at 12 months into the future, that it's not even really worth making those decisions today. So very, very long-winded kind of sharing of my own kind of perspective and approach to this. And honestly, at the end of the day, I'm sharing my experience of which is very, very unique in the sense of I have a business, I live in Switzerland. These are the governmental benefits of having a baby in Switzerland. And then this is the social pressure that I feel as an American with a business, and also not just an American, but also just a business owner online, and what you see other people doing and going through. And then me just ultimately deciding like, I need to make my own decision, and the decision that's best for me, and being able to then do that with the support of my partner, the support of a government, and the support of my business and what I've built it to today. So I wanted to share that with also the same, awareness and acknowledgement that if you're in a different position, whatever you choose to do or whatever you have to choose to do is ultimately the right choice for you. So I'm not saying like everyone should take a 6-month maternity leave, or this is the right thing, or this is the wrong thing, or this is even what's going to happen after I come back after 6 months, because honestly, I have no idea. And I'm just making the best decision for me at this time. But thought I would share that because I think we all put this pressure on ourselves, or we have this perceived pressure that we think is put on us based on where we live or the environment we work in or the family environment we're in. And those are some things that I personally had to be working through with this, big life change as well. So that's the biggest update. And I wanted to share that with you because it's hard to keep it a secret. It's also logistically hard because I have lots of planning and boundaries to put in place over the next 6 months before bringing a new life into this world. And then obviously the 6 months after that of taking time away from my business to continue to bring this life up in the world. And so, yeah, that's kind of the final big update. Some other things that I'm also just personally dealing with that are fairly relevant to my business are that, as you have seen, I haven't been as present on Instagram over the last few months, in large part because of, again, juggling this idea of bringing a new life into the world and how is that going to work? How am I consciously slowing down my business to prepare for obviously taking maternity leave and kind of being out of pocket for a period of time? And it's been a really enlightening experience for me. I've also had opportunities then to dabble in different ways, alternatives to bringing in new clientele and attracting clientele. And I can say that, because of that work that I did on the front end, and I know I created a podcast about this before, but just, if I'm doing a personal life update, I'm really grateful for a lot of the early stage investment that I put in of creating content on my social media, because I've still had clients come my way who have found me on Instagram, even though I haven't posted anything new in a long time. But they're still looking at my content because that content is still evergreen and quite relevant to them. And they're still coming my way and joining the blueprint or joining, coaching in another form. And then, of course, the podcast still working passively to attract new listeners and new clientele, and in that way coming my way as well. And I'm still interested in hoping that over the next 3 months, I can use some other kind of strategies and ideas and implement these things, because I am more than happy to be the crash test dummy of, what else could work for my clientele when it comes to them marketing and promoting and ultimately converting strangers into clientele as well. And I'm excited to be continuing to test that out and see what else I can do, because I know that Instagram works for me. I know what I've done over there has been great, but what other kind of tools can I be using, and can I help my clients learn as well? So that's been a fun thing. And then lastly, one component of my business, or maybe I guess you could call it another business that I have, is a short-term rental real estate. Let's see, how do you say it? Rental real estate investment property that I own back in Chicago. I used to live in it. It was a huge component of me being able to go full-time in my business, because when I purchased it, I was able to obviously reduce my cost of living in the city of Chicago, and having a roommate really helped with that. And then we also Airbnb'd it when my roommate was out of town for work, and we're able to, bring in more income, which then even more so reduced my cost of living. And after my roommate moved out, I was able to continue renting it out, especially when I was traveling. And eventually, when I officially moved to Milan, before moving to Switzerland, I was able to rent it out full time and really turn it into a profitable business, I guess you could say, a profitable investment property. And I am on the cusp of making the decision to pull this property off of Airbnb, and I'm making the choice to either continue it as a long-term rental property, just having long-term renters in it paying a standard monthly rent. What this would do is, during my maternity leave, I would be able to still produce some income via my rental property. So that's one bonus of that. The alternative is just selling the property now with the current market where it's at and reinvesting that income elsewhere. And I wouldn't see that profit or that income, I guess you would say, from a monthly perspective coming into my bank account. It wouldn't necessarily feel like it was, I had something working passively for me because I wouldn't be seeing it. But obviously, if I invested that money from the property, it would produce income in the way of dividends and capital gains. And so that's just a decision point that I'm making, but it is a big choice because I've been doing Airbnb for probably 5 years, and that's been a great way to supplement my income, especially during the months where my business, I'm not in a launch period and not looking to bring in clients and new income or higher income months. So that's been a great way to still level out income. And I think from like a lesson that you can take away from that is, having your business is enough, right? It's a lot of work in and of itself, but anyway, you can find ways to either get creative with your living situation to try to reduce your own cost of living, or find alternative ways to bring in revenue to help kind of diversify your income, especially the reliance that you have on various income sources can be very beneficial in building your business. And so if you happen to have access to those opportunities, definitely take advantage of it. I know not everyone does, but if you do, that could be a way to also just help kind of mentally ease any burdens that might come your way from being a business owner. Burdens, actual, tangible, logistical burdens, or just the stress of it all. So wanted to share that update as well, but I think we all know what the biggest news is. And yes, lots coming down the pipe, if you will, with the Wander Wealthy podcast and Wander Wealthy in general. But here we are at the end of this episode. So don't forget, you can still find ways to work with me over the course of this coming summer. I have one more spot available for anyone who wants to join me for 3 months of Wealthy Coach Blueprint coaching. Typically, I offer an extended version, a 6-month version, but that will not be available anymore. So just the 3-month program, anyone who is looking to grab that last spot, like I said, like I've been saying, this is the last chance to work with me on building your booked out money coaching business in 2022 at least, and the first few months of 2023. So you can head to wanderwealthy.com/blueprint to fill out the application and to take that next step, and we can communicate and talk about what is best for you moving forward. wanderwealthy.com/blueprint. Otherwise, some additional ways to work with me, but more in a DIY aspect, is of course to download the pricing formula or get access to the pricing formula. It's a calculator, it's a guidebook, and it's also an online program that you can definitely conquer in a weekend or even a day. Head to wanderwealthy.com/pricing. It's going to teach you how to price your services without the doubt, without questioning, are people really going to pay for this? And without just throwing that spaghetti at the wall to see if it's going to stick. This is actual real pricing psychology as well as pricing math. And you need to know how to do it to make sure that you are going to be running a profitable and value-based business. And the other thing you can grab if you're looking for additional help in your business, especially on the marketing end, is the Client Attraction Content Matrix. That is another quick mini course. It's going to take you through content creation that is rooted in the buyer's journey, understanding buyer behavior, understanding where your audience is at when they're following along with your content, and how to create content that actually converts these onlookers, these lurkers, into actual paying clients. And I provide you with a ton of bonuses in that, especially 160 plus money coaching specific content prompts that'll help you create content, whether that's going to be TikToks or stories or just posts or YouTube videos or podcast episodes, whatever it is, you can use these prompts and I give them to you as a bonus for free, plus a content calendar and the actual matrix that I use to create high converting content. So you can go to wanderwealthy.com/content to get access to the client attraction content matrix. It is my best kept secret and my favorite tool that I use in my business, and it's going to change your business as well. So lots of different ways we can stay working together over the course of, I guess, the next year. But if you're looking for one-on-one support, like I said, reach out to me on Instagram. I'm at Tess_Wicks, or head to wanderwealthy.com/blueprint and we can take it from there. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this little life update. Got a little personal on you, but it is what it is. I want you to know. I want to be fully open and transparent with what's going on. And that's the tea. So until next time, and remember, the Spring Break Money Coach School is coming up for you over the next 3 months. But I will continue to pop in and do a little intro for the episodes. So until then, I hope you wander wealthy.